Okay. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. And welcome here to the webinar on shaping the future and talking about the greenhouse gas protocol, scope 2 revision, update, and obviously including an expert Q&A here as well. Great to see you joining in such numbers. We can go next. We have panel here today of myself, Killian, Daly. I'm the executive director at EnergyTag, which is a nonprofit working on Scope 2 accounting. I'm also a member of the technical working group on Scope 2 in the greenhouse gas protocol. We'll also have my colleague, Shailesh Telang, who's head of Asia Pacific here at EnergyTag, and also Rachel Swiatek from Climate Group, who's a senior manager in energy systems, and Catherine Chandra, also from AirTrunk, who's the energy transition director there. So we'll run through some slides on the various parts of this consultation process, and looking forward also to plenty of time for Q&A at the end. Next. Okay, so we're going to start with a quick poll, just to take a bit of a temperature check around, how much you know about the Scope 2 revisions. So please just answer the question you see on screen, and we'll get that temperature check. Okay. Good to see that. So the majority, know a little or a moderate amount, and some of you, about 10%, know nothing at all or a lot. So yeah, that's, I suppose, what we kind of expected, and hopefully we can move towards more people knowing at least a moderate amount and hopefully a lot by the end of this session as we run through the various slides. So next slide, and we can just go straight through this one. So first of all, I'll give a presentation on the greenhouse gas protocol itself. So what is it? It's the global rulebook used for corporate electricity accounting. It's used by about 97% of Fortune 500 companies, and companies reporting to the Carbon Disclosure Project using the greenhouse gas protocol consume more power than India. So this is a very significant standard. It also is embedded and referenced in regulations like the EU's Carbon Sustainability Reporting Directive and other disclosure regulations around the world. And it also helps shape clean energy markets. And now, as I'm sure you all know, it is under review. Next slide. The revision process actually kicked off almost 2 years ago now, formally at the start of 2024, putting together the technical working groups. There was actually a survey back in 2023 as well. And we're kind of in the middle of the process right now at the first public consultation phase. So I and the technical working group have been working hard over the last year or so to consider what updates need to be made ultimately to drive towards final publication of this updated standard in 2027, with key revisions clear by next year. So a lot of the main thinking is being done right now. The process is guided by three fundamental principles. This must have integrity, it must drive impact, and it also has to be feasible. This is a hierarchy by which all of the technical working group and governance decisions are made, right? We need an accounting standard that has integrity and also drives impact in the long run, and creates market for all the technologies we need to decarbonize the power system. There's a multi-layer governance, so overall ratified by the steering committee. The key decision-making power on proposals from the various technical working group is in the independent standards board, and the technical working group, for example, on scope 2 and the other topics being reviewed in the greenhouse gas protocol, we're doing the nuts and bolts of the revisions and putting together the proposals that go up to the ISB. Next slide. And so why are we updating this standard? So the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Scope 2 was first published 10 years ago. It was a different world, different context. Renewables weren't as prevalent on global grids as they are today. And the rules essentially are quite loose and have led to quite a bit of issues with the credibility of the claims being made under the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. The quote here on the left from Michael Liebreich, who's the founder of Bloomberg New Energy Finance, talking about the fact that companies can be 100% powered by renewables based on annual matching, which means they can offset nighttime coal use with solar power produced during the daytime. So that obviously is not credible and damages confidence in these standards. And so these rules need to be tightened. There was also some pieces, for example, in the FT last year about this and this kind of disconnect that we see between the claims being made to consume renewable energy and where that energy is produced or when that energy is produced and not really respecting basic realities. Next. And so at a high level, what the solution in our view is and what's kind of reflected in what we'll see later on in the proposal by the Greenhouse Gas Protocol is essentially to look at how the power market works, the electricity grid works, and to make carbon accounting reflect that a bit better. So typically around the world, electricity markets match supply and demand on an hourly basis. In many places, it's 15 minutes or even at a 5-minute basis. And in general, electricity has to be bought and sold within areas where it can actually be delivered to consumers, right? So there's constraints, there's grid constraints that need to be obeyed in real world electricity markets. And so the idea is that we draw carbon accounting more towards that by moving from this annual approach more towards an hourly approach and moving from very broad market boundaries, for example, the entire United States, to actual regions where really electricity is tradable and deliverable. And this can help really bridge or tackle some of the credibility gaps we see with today's methodologies. Next. And so we want to kind of move in general towards a more reality-based type of accounting, moving from this annual accounting that actually ignores things like flexibility in batteries, like why build a battery if you can use a solar certificate at night, to this hourly accounting that's really thinking about how are we making sure that we're rewarding organizations for matching their demand with clean energy on an hourly basis. That doesn't mean that they have to be 24/7 or 100% matched straight away, not at all. It's just that we're measuring it in a proper and accurate way. And ultimately, that will drive incentives for things like storage that are going to be super important for deep decarbonization and unfortunately are kind of left out of clean energy markets today. Also, we move kind of away from this very large boundaries to more deliverable market boundaries. And also, there's a concept called standard supply services being introduced as well to make sure that companies can claim their fair share of existing assets that have been financed by all of us as taxpayers without being able to kind of resource shuffle or claim all of those assets just for one individual or a group of individual consumers. And so this is an evidence-based path as well. There's been plenty of studies and modeling done on this by very kind of credible institutions, some of them shown here on the left. We have a whole list of this if people want to go through it. But essentially, we find that when we move towards companies procuring clean energy on an hourly basis, it's better for systemic decarbonization. It's obviously better for both demand side flexibility of consumers and also for things like storage. Crucially, it also leads to behaviors that are cheaper for the system overall to integrate renewable energy. So when you build solar only, for example, you introduce the benefits of clean energy only at certain times. Whereas if you have solar and batteries, you're really tackling more expensive hours on electricity markets. You're causing less imbalance cost issues on other parts of the grid. It's also better for kind of consumer hedging. So the more we can incentivize these, for example, long-term PPA contracts that are really matched well with the consumer demand, that means that they're better covered in the future against more volatile electricity pricing. And these findings as well are globally consistent. So they've been done on Asia markets, European markets, and also in North America. Next. And so, yeah, this hourly matching or accounting is something that we've demonstrated. Many companies have shown that this is possible, and across kind of various industries and geographies. Again, given that electricity markets anyway work in this way, it's not necessarily a paradigm shift to just use that data and match it on an hourly basis as well for green electricity trading and things like that. Obviously, there's steps to be taken, and we'll talk about that later in terms of like phasing in these things. But there's no like fundamental blockers to this move towards more accurate accounting. And yeah, obviously, this is not the first time we've discussed carbon accounting. Governments from the previous US administration to the European Union to the UK government have also adopted these more granular, electricity accounting rules for things like hydrogen to make sure that when, a company or a product is claiming to use green electricity, that is in line with how that electricity is being produced. And so, yeah, it's been debated many times before, and credible independent institutions have come to the conclusion that more granularity is needed for credibility. And so now I'll just pass briefly to my colleague Shailesh, who's going to focus in on the Asia Pacific region and this move towards hourly matching there.
Thanks, Killian. My name is Shailesh Telang, working with EnergyTag. Thanks for setting the context, a very strong foundation. Let's look into Asia Pacific and let's take a deep dive into it. So let's start by looking at how electric system across Asia Pacific already operating at very high time resolution, as this map shows on the slide. Like many APAC markets, like China, India, Japan, Australia, and several others, they're already scheduled and settle their electricity from 5 to 10 minutes interval. So that shows that these short balancing periods are not just a technical detail, but they are also kind of foundation for hourly or sub-hourly matching between generation and consumption. This means that the data infrastructure for granular accounting or hourly matching already exists. System operators across these markets are already collecting this information, dispatch information, consumption information. Some markets even do that every few minutes. So like when we talk about this move towards temporal correlation and hourly matching, this isn't something that Asia Pacific markets need to invent from the scratch. So the backbone of this data requirement already exists. Next slide. So now moving from data capability to economics, this particular slide shows results from International Energy Agency. They have 2024 report on advancing decarbonization through clean electricity procurement. So these two charts illustrates the modeling for first for India and Indonesia, and it compare the system impact under two procurement approaches. Like the first one is traditional annual matching versus hourly matching, or what we call 24/7 carbon-free energy. So the IEA evaluated not only generation cost, but also the fuel cost, operating cost, and various other costs which typically need for balancing. So what they found is really striking. So the portfolio where, especially the annual matching portfolio, delivers much less value to the power system versus the hourly matching portfolio, where they are basically where the clean supply is aligned with actual consumption. It actually reduces the fuel cost, lower the overall system cost, and add more value to the system operator. So in both India and Indonesia, this portfolio can deliver high overall system value, sometimes even that exceed the cost of standard grid supply. So the takeaway is very clear. Hourly matching is not just better for reporting, but it's also about cheaper and more efficient electricity markets. Next slide. This one is really interesting. So let's look into how real world markets are turning the concept of hourly matching into action. So these are the three news snippets from various markets. We look into UAE, the recent solar plus storage project, which is already providing clean and firm power across day and night. And also looking into Philippines, the recent inauguration of baseload solar plus project, which is backed by solar and energy storage. They no longer need the sun, into the during the night because they are storing the energy. And in India, the solar and storage auctions are already taking place. When we look into the cost of all this firm storage back energy procurement, UAE, we have seen the cost as low as $55 per megawatt hour, which is very low. Like together means when we add additional costs like max $65 per megawatt hour. And Philippines, also, the storage pack PPAs is roughly, means we do not have the cost numbers for that, but it's basically around these lines. And in India, we have so many round-the-clock tenders already taking shape, and the cost discovered roughly around $70 per megawatt hour, which is way below than the average cost of somewhere around $100 per megawatt hour, which shows the economics of hourly matched clean energy. Next slide. So now let's zoom into one of the good example for procurements evolving around hourly matched time-aligned clean energy. A new PPA, which is signed by Serentica with Solar Energy Corporation of India, is one of the great example. This is what we call load following PPA, has been signed, and this is the hybrid arrangement between solar, wind, and battery storage. The design is already serving 80% of the hourly matched load profile each month. And the project is like somewhere around 70 megawatt up to 100 megawatt size range. And what makes it very significant, because this is kind of first of its kind round the clock RTC PPA, which is crafted around hourly matching and not simply an annual renewable energy target. So this actually paves the way for more firm storage-backed hourly PPAs in India. Yeah. Next slide. So let's turn into China. This is a really interesting example where some of the most advanced foundation for hourly matching are clearly being built. The first, China's digital and smart grid infrastructure is already expanding quite rapidly. The deployment of millions of smart meters and advanced monitoring system across various provinces in China is already creating a data backbone, which is required for granular matching. Second, the advanced renewable energy market is already underway. The real-time and spot trading are already active in multiple provinces. In fact, recently, like a few weeks back, they did the bidding process, the tendering process for this real-time markets, which is supporting sub-hourly settlements and also enable flexible power dispatch. This reforms are already setting up the foundation for time-aligned procurement in China. And finally, the innovation is also accelerating across hourly emission factor. So we have seen the Tsinghua University and the State Grid Jiangsu have already jointly launched China's first minute-level carbon tracking platform, which is known as e-carbon platform. This platform can create like emissions from generating to load in real time and turning like carbon accounting into grid level visibility tool. So together, these all development shows how China's digital infrastructure coupled with market reforms and innovative ecosystem, the one by Tsinghua University and State Grid, are positioning the country to lead this hourly matching and more advanced clean energy markets. Next slide. This is the example that hourly matching is already being demonstrated in China. This is done using the EnergyTag standard is inspired by EnergyTag standard. And what the company has done is the market facilitator, which is AsiaRex, worked with Wanhua Chemical and Luang, which is the producer. In the first case, they did 2 pilot projects. And the other one is Media and Guangdong Energy Group Company Limited. So both of these examples are taking green electricity certificate, which is a tracking instrument in China, coupled with hourly or sub-hourly generation and consumption data, and demonstrated that hourly matching is possible using the power purchase agreement as the instrument, along with the tracking instrument in the form of green electricity certificates. So one of the great example in China already showing hourly matching is possible. Next. So with that, I hand over to Rachel. Thank you.
Thanks, Shailesh, and hi, everyone. So at the moment, the GHG proposals at the moment may be feeling quite theoretical to you. So I wanted to bring a tangible example to help ground this in the realities for corporates. And there already is a global framework that sets out the credible claims for time and locationally matched, which has been developed as part of the Climate Group's 24/7 carbon-free coalition. And in its development process, it's grappled with similar questions GHGP are now considering. So I'll walk through the coalition's technical criteria and how the coalition is providing the safe testing environment for corporates to explore what granular matching means for their procurement. So if we go on to the next slide, thank you. I will first give a quick overview of the coalition itself. First thing to say is that it doesn't replace RE100. It's Climate Group's newest initiative that sits side by side with RE100. And the 24/7 Carbon-Free Coalition brings together a powerful ecosystem of corporate and technical partners. And together we're testing and shaping what 24/7 carbon-free electricity looks like in practice for every hour, every day, and sourced locally. So we accelerate decarbonisation, align policy and investments, deploy more carbon-free technologies, and help businesses to drive climate action. Go on to the next slide, please. And core to that is, of course, the development of the first global framework defining credible claims to use time and locationally matched carbon-free electricity. And corporates need clarity on the rules of the game, essentially, ones that balance ambition with feasibility. So version 1 was published in May 2025 this year, and was the product of collaboration between partners as part of our technical and strategic advisory groups. The framework sets out the definitions of carbon-free electricity resources based on zero total fuel cycle GHG emissions, and you can see what's included as part of that in the green box on the right. And it is also the first standardized framework where energy storage is recognised, a really key part of the energy transition. Hourly matching is required, as is location matching. And the market boundaries there are defined and largely align with RE100's definitions, which is the related campaign for achieving 100% renewable energy, though there are some cases where the boundaries are regional. And these geographic market boundaries are also broadly in line with what's proposed under GHGP at the moment. And as with RE100, assets need to be 15 years old or less as part of driving additional resources to grids with some market and global exemption thresholds. If we go on to the next slide, thanks. That has been a very quick outline, and you can absorb all the detail on our website. The technical criteria are freely available, along with the digestible executive summary, FAQs, and a recording of a more depth webinar explainer too. So we'll take a moment to look at the corporate leaders who are benefiting by proactively aligning towards hourly carbon-free electricity. Our corporate partners are already piloting the technical criteria I mentioned, and they are learning by doing in a supportive environment that the coalition provides. and feeding back to shape the coalition's technical criteria to make it both ambitious and feasible. So through their testing, they're gaining insights that not only inform their own operations, but can also inform their input to the GHGP consultation process too. Our corporate partners are getting ahead of regulation and being proactive in their piloting, and you can find out more about their action through the case studies on our website. And even better, we will in a moment hear from Catherine about Air Trunk's journey towards hourly carbon-free electricity. Stay up to date with the 24/7 Coalition's developments and announcements in the wider ecosystem. Sign up to our newsletter using the QR code on screen. And if you're interested in exploring how the Coalition can support you navigating what time and location matching means for your organisation, you can get in touch with the team on the 24/7 team email. And I will hand to Catherine next.
Thanks, Rachel. So hi, everyone. Thank you for your time and being here. For context, I'm Catherine, Energy Transition Director of Telang. I look after all the energy innovation project and product developments within the business as well as industry partnerships. So Telang is a hyperscale data center operating in Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, and Hong Kong. We just announced KSA last week, and we've been in the journey with the Climate Group and the Technical Advisory Group on 24/7 Coalition. So we are one of the founding partner, and I'd like to share a little bit of our 24/7 clean energy journey. So Telang in 2022 started announced our net zero target at our sustainability report. And what we see is that 24/7 for us, 24/7 CFE for us is a stretch target. And I'll share a little bit more about that. So we see 24/7 clean energy as a key to power system decarbonization. So in 2023, after we set our net zero target in 2022, we published a white paper, which is available in our website. And the white paper outlines some of the the challenges as well as the key unlocks and the pathway forward towards 24/7. So you've heard from Shailesh earlier about some success stories within Asia Pacific, particularly India and China. We operate in other local Asia Pacific geographies, namely Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Japan, and Hong Kong, and they have very different energy market setup as well as market boundary condition. So in each of the market, we do see the importance of understanding the local need, and these are namely the cost as well as the technology available, because we see 24/7 as a local affair, local way of decarbonizing the grid. So yeah, we published the 24/7 Clean Energy Report in partnership with support of McKinsey on Pathways for Asia Pacific. That same year, we also signed first hourly matching renewable contract in Hong Kong. We love to innovate, and this was actually first of its kind hourly RECs matching data center electricity consumption with local RECs, and we did it in partnership with the utility in Hong Kong. That was an example of how in Hong Kong, a country with a lot of restriction, there are possibilities to create or pioneer innovation. That in 2024, we add some renewable energy procurement, and that is namely 25 megawatt solar farm in partnership with hyperscaler in New South Wales, as well as signing the first data center renewable PPA under Malaysia Virtual PPA program. That was 30 megawatt. And on top of that, that year we joined Climate Group RE100 initiative, as well as 24/7 CFE Coalition as a founding partner. So we've been journeying alongside 24/7, and it's been really, I would say, fruitful collaboration. There's a lot of learnings from our end when it comes to how US and Europe does it. One of the key things that we see, and this was outlined in our 24/7 report, is that particularly in Asia Pacific and Japan, 24/7 is a stretch target because the cost premium is higher than in Europe and in North America. And I think when it comes to cost, there are two things that I see. One is the amount of renewable available in each of the geography. And in some of the markets we operate, for example, in Singapore, renewables are something that needed to be developed. Renewable sourcing is something that needs a lot of collaboration across the different functions. So we've done all this works, giving you an example. So in 2025, after we learn and we grow together, we partner with Flexida, which is a software intelligence platform, to map out our 24/7 carbon-free electricity score. And we are also developing 24/7 solutions with solutions provider. Giving you an example, in Australia, there are so-called basic PPAs that are being offered, but we haven't seen what a 24/7 PPA product, if you will, being offered the way it's available in the UK. I think Octopus Energy does great work in consolidating some of the resources or supplies so that there is option to contract. So I do a lot of partnership with solution providers, building solutions for 24/7. So we are working towards like adding solar plus wind plus BESS PPAs, looking into how we can also unlock some of the BESS PPA. And then we have also been continuing our partnership under 24/7 Coalition. I think there are few key things when it comes to how do we progress towards 24/7. Setting a target is something that is very useful because then we are progressing towards something. Understanding the local markets where we operate, what is the cost, what is the technology available, which are also varies across the different countries we operate at. It's very, very key because that will give the understanding, will give us pathway towards how we can progress. And then the last part is the collaboration. It's like I mentioned, it's been so enriching to be part of the coalition, learning and contributing, providing insights and value from the particular geography we are at. You can already tell that what Shailesh shared would look rather different with our experience because it's different market, even though it is within Asia Pacific. So that collaboration and learning and hopefully leveraging some of what other markets have been able to achieve, that will provide some form of progress and collective success in progressing 24/7. One last point is the regulation and the partnership with government. I think our experience in some markets, the framework, the renewable framework are not as robust as the others. To give an example, in Australia, it's a lot more robust than in Malaysia, for example. These are where industry partnerships, we can work together to progress this.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and of course to the other speakers as well. It's great to have this focus on Asia Pacific. It's obviously by far the world's largest region of electricity consumption and generation, and really exciting things happening there, and maybe even a leapfrogging in some ways of the procurement and accounting approaches that we see in other regions. So thank you so much for that. Right, so quickly, I'm going to run through what's in the consultation on greenhouse gas protocol that is open right now. Basically, what we're proposing for the market-based accounting is that large companies would move from current annual accounting to an hourly accounting of their green energy supply. That does not mean a 24/7 requirement or 100% matching requirement. Getting to that point will mean different things in different places. It just means you have to count more accurately than we do today. Also, there's a deliverability consideration. So, for example, splitting markets like Europe and the US that are currently one region into regions that better represent how the power markets in those regions actually work. There's detailed lists, again, in the public consultation document. There's also this concept of the standard supply service. So at a high level, what it means is that, we're trying to mitigate some resource shuffling where, 70 or 80-year-old assets, for example, are being used by one individual company to be 100% clean energy or renewable, and making sure that those assets that have been paid for by everyone are kind of evenly distributed to everyone and everyone gets their fair share. And then finally, the default emissions rate is to use not the grid average, which is often used today, but instead a residual mix or a fossil average mix in cases where energy consumption is not matched directly to a clean energy contract, for example. So they're the main proposed changes. Crucially, there's a number of feasibility considerations there. So, for example, if you don't have the data on an hourly basis of consumption, many consumers do, but some may not, you can use representative profiles, as is commonplace in electricity markets, to get an hourly profile and to do your hourly accounting. Another key point is there's an exemption threshold under consideration. So this is one of the questions also in the document. There would be 5, 10, potentially 50 gigawatt hour exemption threshold per market boundary. And basically what this means is actually looking at the data, the majority of companies would not have to do the hourly accounting, for example, but the majority of consumption would, because a small number of companies actually consume the vast amount of electricity. Crucially, there's also legacy clauses. So if you have, like, for example, a long-term PPA that's been signed this year under today's rules, then that would be kind of grandfathered into the future, right? The details of that are being developed, and there's definitely some open questions on that one. But that concept is important to make sure that people are not retroactively, disadvantaged. And then finally, there's a phased implementation. So obviously, this is not going to come in directly overnight. There's going to be a period of time, a number of years, where the market will have time to get ready for the new rules. Crucially, there's also another consultation open on consequential emissions. So basically, that's, for example, if you want to, if you don't have any load in a given country, but you still want to invest in clean energy there, you can still do that. So you can do any type of PPA you want, really, under these rules, but you would just account for that in a different way using this consequential metric that is being developed in parallel in the Actions and Market Instruments Working Group. And so that, at a high level, they're the main broad stroke changes that are being proposed. Next slide, please. And so just some key kind of common FAQ Q&As that we hear about this. I'll just run through these quickly. So is this a 24/7 requirement? No, it's just to do accurate accounting. Is more accuracy needed in accounting? Yes, current rules are too inaccurate to be credible. Some organizations are already having no emissions under current rules, despite the fact that the world has quite a long way to go still to decarbonize the power grids on which they're operating. So this disconnect must be solved. Is there the data? I hope we've shown that already. Of course, getting access to that will require some work in many places. But fundamentally, this data is the basis of electricity markets and billing, right? This hourly data. And so the data is largely there, and where it's not, then we can use profiling to ease implementation. Is this immediate? No. The rules will be published in 2027, and I'm sure there'll be a couple of years at least after that until the new rules come in. Will this slow clean energy purchases? So obviously these flexibilities and phasings will help with a smooth transition. But in the long run, what the research shows and kind of common sense shows as well is the more we can align demand for electricity with actual supply of clean electricity around the clock, that's going to be the healthiest way to ensure that, clean energy is a valuable asset and commodity for companies in the long run. And of course, also, if companies do want to go outside of their market boundary, for example, and buy clean energy in another grid, they will still be able to do that and account for that in a different way. One thing maybe it will impact is some of the lower quality clean energy procurement we see today that really has quite questionable links to consumption, and also in terms of having meaningful revenues for renewable generators. Next. So that's the consultation document. We'll share the link after in the follow-up mail. There's two consultations, obviously, one on the consequential and one on the scope 2 update. December 19th is when that closes, okay? And as I've been through already, granularity is the key direction of travel on the scope 2 method. Next. So there's a survey with 183 questions. Many are multiple choice. You don't have to answer them all. And obviously we recommend for transparency, to report and respond publicly. But obviously anonymity is possible also if you make a request for that. Next. And so what's being asked, basically, this is a summary at a high level of the key buckets of and categories of questions. So there's things on, this is focusing obviously on the market-based method, things like the feasibility exemptions or questions on hourly matching, brief questions on the consequential method in the scope 2 one, and some other aspects as well, like how this should be reported. Next. So yeah, there's some key kind of open-ended themes. I think ones that probably will take a little bit more thinking from folks than others. So around the flexibilities, around things like standard supply service, like how will that apply in different regions? What type of supply should be treated under SSS? And then things around the residual and fossil mix and the availability of those. Next. And so EnergyTag today is actually publishing a guidebook that really walks you through in a short executive summary, but then also in a much more detailed format as well, how to respond to the questions and our recommendations for responses. We have a lot of FAQs in there and evidence basis, etc. So it's really a one-stop shop for how to respond to the scope 2 consultation to try make that as easy as possible. This is just a screenshot here on the right-hand side from the front page. Really, if you have literally half an hour, these are the questions you should go to, and these are the answers that we recommend that you should submit in order to broadly support this direction of travel, and also to make sure that your concerns or guidance on how it can be improved are submitted. Next. And yes, there's a much more detailed section after the 3-page executive summary as well, where you can really dive deep into various parts of the consultation and have our guidance and ideas of how you might respond. Next. And yeah, so we have some visuals as well. We've done quite a lot of work on this to try, really make it clear what exactly is being proposed and what that might look like. This is an example of, different types of your demand qualifying under different parts of, being hourly matched or maybe being in the residual fossil mix section. Next. And finally, the guidebook link, we will share it, possibly also in the chat here. We have a website called Scope Through as well that we're running. The guidebook is available from that. Sign up to that mailing list and you can get lots of resources and future webinars on there as well. That's I think that's it. And obviously the main final thing before we go to Q&A is please respond to this public comment. It's very, very important that we have a broad perspective on these proposed changes to make them have high integrity and work for all. Okay, so now we'll move to the Q&A. So the first one is around how will Scope 2 revisions impact cross-border PPAs, existing and future ones. All right, so existing, so everyone's back. So yeah, for cross-border PPAs, again, there's going to be, legacy provisions that will be in place. So if you have long-term, fixed price PPA, for example, in a completely different region, that will be accounted for in the same way as today until it runs out. The details of that are being fleshed out, but that concept is there. In the future, so if you have a PPA, for example, that is in a region with no interconnection or very little interconnection to your demand, you won't be able to say that you're consuming that because you can't do that physically. But you would, for example, be able to do an accounting for that under the consequential metric. And also, if you can prove cross-border transfer of power, for example, from Malaysia to Singapore under that PPA, then that will also count, right? So deliverability across markets is allowed in cases where there's actual provable electricity flows. The next question is around, I've heard several people claiming that with these more granular rules on Scope 2 reporting, companies will stop using the GHGP because it makes reporting too burdensome. How can we debunk these claims? Do we know that what will be the additional cost of reporting under the 24/7 model? Okay, so basically, yeah, I think companies won't stop buying clean energy and doing emissions reporting if they have to do it more accurately, as long as this is phased in the right way and feasibility is made clear for folks. Obviously, if they're doing reporting under kind of regulatory mechanisms or have things like SBTI targets, they'll have to use this methodology as well to report through those standards and regulations. And I hope, as well, as we've shown already, right, there's plenty of people showing this can be done right now, this hourly accounting and hourly matching. And so we'll have a number of years before it's kind of more widely applied. And again, it won't even apply to things like SMEs. So I think the reporting burden is not something that will end up being too much of a concern. And in the long run, this accounting is going to have more credibility and drive more effective markets. And so in that sense, the juice will be worth the squeeze. In terms of additional costs, I've talked to folks, and this is nothing, a small fraction of a percent of the cost of procuring electricity or managing, that data in general to do hourly accounting. Okay. Anyone want to try to come in on that? Yeah.
Yeah, just really doubling down on that kind of point you made on the exemption clauses, the legacy clauses that are in the proposals of the GHGP means that hourly matching is not being asked of all companies in all markets from tomorrow. That is not what's being proposed. It's really the kind of largest energy buyers that this is for. And I think that's something that's worth being kind of looked at for companies looking at what's being suggested for where those thresholds of legacy clauses are and considering how that might apply to you. So do go and have a look at that detail of the consultation as well for yourselves.
Great. Yeah, there's a quick one. I can just take that very quickly. Will there be a recommended template provided for completing submissions? Yes, so we've been through that. That will be the guidebook, at least from EnergyTag, where it's pretty detailed of how to submit and what you might say to submit. Next, so how do you see the Scope 2 revisions interacting with the Asian power grid and cross-border trade in discussions in Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, for example? So Shailesh, maybe if you want to touch on that
Yeah.
one? Because I think it is one area actually where there's a new opportunity from this proposal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the really important question because Scope 2 revisions on deliverability directly complement what ASEAN expanded power grid is trying to achieve through Asian power grid and cross-border trade. Under the new guidance, market-based electricity claims must come from generation that is physically deliverable to the consumer's grid, and that's exactly what Asian power grid and expansion plan aims to enable. So especially for countries like Malaysia, Philippines, also Singapore comes into the picture within the ASEAN power grid region. This means that the cross-border interconnection expand. Any renewable import could count towards Scope 2 inventories only if they follow, if basically they flow through the APG, this Asian power grid transmission lines, and are backed by hourly and like locationally tracking instruments. So this is like very important to demonstrate that this is physically deliverables as well as environmental attributes associated with it. So I think it's very important to have the defined deliverable zone across the Asian power grid interconnection so that corporations, corporate procurements rule with physical grid boundaries, matches with these requirements. And also, it would be great to have the modernized tracking system as well to include hourly stamp or cross-border compatible energy attribute tracking instrument so that the ASEAN trading ambitions around GHG protocol revision kind of reinforce with each other. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll move to there's a question here. What's the role of battery energy storage in achieving hourly matching and 24/7? Will there be guidance on how best can time shift energy from one hour to another? So obviously batteries are going to be essential in achieving high levels of hourly matching and eventually 24/7 matching. Today, unfortunately, batteries play very little role in energy attribute certificate markets or even PPA markets. That will have to change for the grid to deliver clean, affordable electricity. And this proposal will really put the value on that type of changing. Yeah, so basically, I think that in the phase 2 of the update, we will go into more detail of how you do time shifting of green energy using batteries. EnergyTag has worked on that. We've worked on pilots in Texas, for example, with battery operators to demonstrate how this can be done. So this is something we've proven you can do time shifting of green energy attributes using batteries, and this is set to be a kind of a cornerstone of the future of clean energy markets in a way that it's not been today. There's another question. What are the benefits of hourly matching and carbon-free electricity? Maybe pass to you on this one, Catherine, to just kind of maybe reiterate what you said earlier about like what are the benefits for you as an organization in moving towards this more granular approach?
Yeah, thanks, Killian. So I think for us, we started with the net zero target, and then we always challenge ourselves how we can do better or what we can do better. For context, data center load is typically base load, so we are operating 24/7. So there is, as part of corporate, being a good corporate citizen, we are looking into how we can support every jurisdiction where we operate at their decarbonization journey. I think that is the first part. Is there a continuation to that question?
No, it's just in terms of the general benefits you see. Yeah.
Well, in UK, for example, the commercial case is that at some point of time, 24/7 procurement, PPA procurement will be more competitive, and that was demonstrated and shared by Shailesh for India. It will take time to develop that. Like for us, we see the value of being part of contributing to leading the charge. The reality, though, in some of the market, we do need to progress towards the least cost solution.
Yeah, No, absolutely, and I think that for the future in Europe, unfortunately, this year the PPA market is declined by maybe 50% around that, and I think the key way forward there is to add in batteries and make those PPAs more competitive, so they can deliver cheap and clean electricity at times when typically cheap and clean electricity is not available. For example, when the sun goes down and it's not very windy. So I think that approach in the long run will get us towards more competitive sourcing of power purchase agreements so that we're benefiting directly consumers of electricity. So that's really important point. Where are we now? We're looking to source PPAs from our manufacturing sites, but should we rate distance to the factory higher than hourly matching? Briefly, I can say I think it depends what country you're in, but yeah, if you're in APAC, for example, within the country is typically where folks would sign PPAs, and you should look at what level of hourly matching makes sense for you today, right? Doing 24/7 straight away, that might not make sense. It probably won't, but maybe focusing on, can we get to, I don't know, 60, 70, 80% now, and then going forward, to increase that score over time as things like battery costs drop. So we've time for, yeah, please.
Maybe just to add to what you mentioned,
Yeah.
Killian, and this is quite, we've been saying this in our journey. We are aiming for progress, not perfection. And in every
Sure.
country, progress will look different. In some
Mm.
countries, solar plus wind can already amount to 60 to 70%. And then when you add
Yeah.
battery, then you add another maybe 5 to 10%. So that's practical. In other countries, it will look very different depending on what resource is available. The other thing is that for corporates, you will want to see what is your generation profile, because if it is hourly matching, if your generation profile is primarily during daytime, for example, solar is an excellent PPA to offset your consumption. In other, like if you are 24/7, if you're operating 24/7, then you need to build towards like 60, 70, 80%. So it will look really different for different corporates. And I touched the point of understanding both your consumption pattern, but also what is the available resource.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Maybe we'll just take two more questions. Then there's been a lot, so we'll work on providing answers to others by mail after. Why has additionality been excluded? Okay, so additionality means essentially meaning having demand, being higher than supply and driving that demand for then more clean supply. So it has not been excluded. These rules would be much tighter in terms of making sure that we send the right signals for additional clean energy in the evening, for example, through batteries. Also, the concept of standard supply service makes sure that a lot of the old existing assets can only be allocated in a fair share, and so that creates a signal for new clean energy assets as well. So these rules are not excluding additionality. They will lead to more system level additionality of clean energy, and that's a very important point. We'll take one more, maybe for you, Rachel. So what would be any differences in the concept of greenhouse gas protocol proposing to the Climate Group's 24/7 initiative?
Yeah. Conceptually, no difference. It's all going towards hourly matching. So they're very aligned. Obviously, in terms of whether the details align, we'll have to see when the GHG final proposals come through. But as things stand, they are also very well aligned, including on, say, the market boundaries that are listed in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've said it 4 times already, but one thing that's extremely important is obviously, the GHGP is a way to count emissions. It doesn't say you need to be 0 by year X or need to be 24/7 match. So that's a very important part of understanding what this proposal is. It's just more accurate. Okay. Thank you so much. Do we have something else for the audience, or will we wrap? Or we have a final Yeah. Okay. Great. I hope there's a lot of yeses on this from folks still on the session. I know there's still actually a lot of you on here. So if you could answer that question, to let us know if you're planning on responding, that would be awesome. Oh, okay, interesting. So yes, the majority will. There's a lot still not quite sure. Well, listen, hopefully you can share these slides and also read the guidebook we're putting out. You can respond in 30 minutes if all you have is 30 minutes. And so yeah, we definitely encourage everyone to respond if at all possible. We're having another session this afternoon, by the way. So if you have colleagues or friends who are not able to join right now, we're holding a session later on today as well for folks in the US and obviously in places like Europe. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks to our panelists as well for their time and detailed insights. And we'll see you all again soon. Stay tuned for the follow-up email and looking forward to seeing you all respond to public comment. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks.